Hey, everybody. Well, it finally happened to us. Just like all podcasters, it seems, we had technical difficulties, and about midway through, our internet froze up. So sorry for some of the change in sound quality, specifically on my mic. But it is what it is. I guess everyone has to go and fight the internet gods that be, exorcise the demons, and so we'll try to work hard to do that in the coming episodes. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, if you could, that helps us find new listeners, or better yet, recommend it to a friend. Maybe you have those who listen to our podcast tend to be mission practitioners, so pastors, missionaries, and the like, usually in tough places where the standard stories of success and whatnot aren't exactly, let's say, passable for our experience. So anyway, so if you could, please recommend this to someone else. Go on to iTunes and subscribe yourself. Pass the word along and enjoy the rest of this podcast. Merry Christmas. Islands in the sea, that is what we are, Garrick. It's just you and me today, buddy. It's good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Happy Advent.
Happy Advent. We are in the third week of Advent, all stinking ready.
I didn't grow up with Advent. Like the kind of, but not until I became a Presbyterian did that becomes like you in the church calendar, and so then like Christmas became like more of a full-time monthly process, so I appreciate it a lot more. I think now that we have decorations and in Europe, people put up I guess in the States you get your lights up and everything, but here it's like, when Advent starts, like all the lights go up and there's just really this sense of Christmas of, it's a little less commercial here too.
It's gotten really commercial here.
It's starting to get that way, but it's still.
It started out not that way when we moved here. Well, when my wife moved here 15 years ago, but when I moved here 13 years ago, it was not that way. I mean, back then, gosh, on Saturdays and Sundays, all stores were closed.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of them were closed.
Same here.
And on Saturdays they closed at like 3 p.m. It was fantastic. So no, Advent was different. Now there's a lot more commercialism, but I do appreciate the amount that Advent is around for us, because I didn't grow up with it either, like you. Yeah. I was a typical free church, or what do we call that? Evangelical church.
Low church.
Yeah. Yeah.
No creeds, no liturgy.
But what's interesting is there's kind of a movement among even low churches, it seems like these days, to bring Advent and some of the creeds and different aspects about things back in. I mean, you've got some real interesting things going on. It would have been interesting to talk to Maxwell about this, given his heritage, but he knows. And now I'm blanking on the pastor's name. I think he's a pastor in Kansas City. What is his name? He comes out of a charismatic movement, but he's kind of left that now. But they do a lot more high church things. He's a lot more open to. Why can I not think of his name? Anyway, whatever.
Some guy.
Some dude. He said some really important things. Tweeted out a few things that I thought were interesting there.
Yeah. So here. So the thing that's kind of we've been going on for us is we put, for the first time on our kind of balconies, we have these 2 balconies, we put lights outside. The kids and everyone was like, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? But no one does it because there's lights in the street,
Right.
Someone does that. You don't see it. So, my daughter actually, so she went to get her haircut, and the lady was talking about, there's someone put these lights up in the, the squares over there. And she's like, oh, that's my house. But anyway, so, but the other day I was walking and I saw some guy, his balcony. So, these are all we all live in apartment buildings, it's this balcony. He had gone full Christmas Vacation. Like what's
way.
What's
awesome.
the name of that family?
What's Chevy Chase?
Chevy Chase, yeah, but in
the
Griswolds, he gone full
Griswolds.
Clark Griswold. He gone, and it was like glowing. He had stars. He had flashing lights. He had so many lights. So I was like, all right, I know what I need to do next year. The challenge has been accepted. We're gonna. This guy's went up me by way too much. So he's probably not Spanish. He's probably some American guy.
It probably is. I absolutely love the movie Christmas Vacation. There are, of course, crass things in there that should not be endorsed, but that movie saved the neck for me, Clark. I mean, just the whole movie is just fantastic. I love it.
There's something fascinating there. Okay, so we have in America this kind of tradition of Christmas, like you have your very serious Christmas movies, and but we have a whole kind of tradition of kind of absurdity around Christmas.
Yeah,
like
that's
Christmas
true.
Vacation, Elf, which is Elf, one of my fantastic movies.
Yeah.
And then in Texas, we have, of course, the song "Merry Christmas from the Family" by Robert L. Keane, which is fantastic. But these are kind of the low end of Christmas, but still end with a hopeful, right? They're still hopeful about family, about uniting people, but they're kind of
it's a little bit. Those are embracing the messy of family, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's part of it. Yeah, no, that's actually true. Well, American comedy tends to be absurd anyway.
Yeah.
So that is what we do. But yeah, no, Christmas Vacation, Elf, those are fantastic.
Yeah, and there's a bunch more.
Yeah,
there's just tons. We have this whole.
Do you have a favorite go-to Christmas movie? So it doesn't have to be comedy, just any kind of movie.
Oh, we always watch Elf as a family, just because it's just such a fun movie. And I think we watched the.
Can anyone in your family not rewatch movies? Like, oh no, we watched that. I don't want to watch it again.
No, we all can watch over and over again.
Do y'all go through the endless cycle when it's time to pick a movie or something? The endless cycle of vetoes?
Yeah, it can be a little tricky.
Oh.
And we got kids at very different life stages.
Yeah. So that's true. Yeah. You range quite a few years. Yeah.
So there's some things that Violet can't watch. She's too young.
Yeah. We do a lot of, we'll do a movie like on Friday nights with pizza or something. But we've gotten to where we don't even tell the kids what we're going to watch, because inevitably, if we just play it, they love it. Generally speaking, we had one recently that was a bit of a fail, they'll just accept it if we just go, okay, here's a movie we're playing. But if we show them the trailer, they'll go, no, I don't want to watch that. Yeah. And so anyway, we've just decided we just play the movie.
What's the other one we always watch is I can't remember the name. It's a Christmas Story. It's the Hollywood one they did a while ago. It's really good.
You mean You'll Shoot Your Eye Out Christmas Story?
No. The actual Christmas story of Jesus' birth. Although Christmas Story is another great movie.
The Nativity?
It's got the guy from Star Wars. The Nativity, yes. It's got the guy from Star Wars.
Gosh, we should show that to our kids.
It's a good movie. It's not it's not super, nothing blows up. Sorry.
Which, in my opinion, is all the worse for it. Really, yeah. Jesus. Why couldn't have something blown up?
No gun battles or flying, but it's a really good telling of the Nativity story. So we watch that, and then Elf. Those are the two movies every Christmas.
Hey, do you know what a haruspec is?
No.
So a haruspec is people who try to tell divination by virtue of entrails.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So what does it all mean? It seems to me, it seems to you and me, because we talked about this before we started our podcast, that this was a terrible shift. I think I dropped the transmission on this shift, but
it's good.
Yeah,
we learned something about. We learned what a haruspec is.
Our haruspec. I think I could be right. I could be wrong. I think that's what it means, though. And I'm only getting this from reference from another podcast that I was listening to earlier in the week on my run. But anyway, be that as it may, there are those who take the entrails of things and then try to understand the tides. Yeah. We have had
Sears.
Yes, we have had a series of 3 incredible episodes of.
This is very good. This is actually a very good transition. Sorry.
The Rapid.
This is
a
good one. I
Trails
see where
podcast. But so I like being able to chat with you about things, and that's in part what this podcast is. So the experts or the people that we've had on have been fantastic. But it might be good to pull out some entrails and kind of, what does it all mean? Do some interpretation or even reflections upon that. So in no particular order today, why don't we just talk about kind of your big takeaways, my big takeaways, without having at all prepared for this. Shoot from the hip and see what we hit.
Sounds good. No, that's a first rate. That's a good transition. I think I give you 9 out of 10 on the transition.
Hey, I appreciate that.
That's really
wow,
really good one.
That's really great. So what at this point? I mean, there's so much to talk about because recently we had Deb and Sean on. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from that episode of people just saying, wow, that was really helpful, really good. We had Maxwell on. I got an email from a pastor friend of mine who's planning a church, said, man, that was so refreshing. And then Randy Newman is just an incredible mind on evangelism. So there's lots to unpack there. I don't know if you have any particular areas that you're just like, oh, this is what I want to start on. But what does it all mean to you?
I think it means
I put the pressure on you in this instance. Did you notice how I did that?
I think all of it means is that we have to really, I don't want to say the word rethink, but I think we really have to rethink, pivot, recalibrate how we think and talk and imagine and dream about evangelism. And I don't think we're that far off in general. But maybe when I'm speaking more as an organization like Cru, I'm that isn't principally an evangelistic organization, one that is talking about we want to communicate. We want everyone to know about Jesus, but we want to communicate the gospel. Is that I think we have to take some rethinking as an organization, but maybe it's even the wider church. And when I say church, I'm talking evangelical to Catholic to Orthodox, to how we communicate the gospel, because there, and I think something down the road when you get into, because there's still going to be that argument that says, well, you don't even need to communicate. Where are we? That's because that's violence or that's propaganda. And I think between that and we just need to hand people tracts, and and I realize those are two straw men. I'm kind of pushing to the extremes because that's what you do. You create two straw men on your right and your left, and you find yourself in the middle. You're like, this is why I'm right.
I find my best arguments are formed with straw men.
yeah. But those straw men have elements of truth, in the polarization of the conversation. So people should be aware that we understand that things aren't as simple. But I think So I think that's where.
Well, okay.
That's
What do you mean we need to? What do you mean to rethink? Are there specific elements that you think we should rethink? I can't talk today. It's Friday, and honestly, I'm in kind of a weird mood. So this might be a terrible podcast, or it could be awesome,
or the best one ever. I don't know. That's a good question. I think between those two poles of let's just get the message out there, and it doesn't matter, and we can't force things on people. Okay, and I would say both of those are true statements, right? We should get the message out there, and we shouldn't force things on people. What is that? What is the conversation we're actually going to have? What are we actually going to do? And I think that I'm going to introduce a term here that I think and it's just kind of coming to me right now. So I'm just going to riff here. We need, in the world of evangelism and communicating the gospel, we need to become reflective practitioners. And so reflective practitioners are people who are doing ministry in the ministry, doing it on the field, but they're constantly thinking, imagining and dreaming with the information they have, with the things they're learning, with the reality of the context they're in. You're constantly evolving what you're doing, right? And I think we need to be doing that. Particularly as Christians, our reflection needs to always have tied back to the tradition and the theology that we deeply believe in. We can't abandon that. So it doesn't mean, what I'm not saying is that we just become constantly evolving, and so methods or whatever or style, that's a lot of what was evangelical evangelism was, just get someone cool looking, kind of at its core. It was kind of the packaging was the most important thing, right?
Well,
Packaging, I'm not saying that's not good.
I think we could go to Hillsong, New York, to find out how that's turned out.
Yeah.
He's not the only guy to have moral failings. There's plenty of ridiculous, not cool people who have had moral failings. So in defense,
and there's plenty of very cool people who are incredibly have a ton of integrity and
touche. Good point. Sorry.
Yeah,
for everyone that I offended with that.
But the point is that the packaging is not. So what I'm trying to say is we probably need to rediscover what was Jesus? How did Jesus share the gospel? How did Jesus talk to people? We probably need to rediscover that core, and then how does that look at what we're doing today and the context we're in today?
Yeah, when you talk about being a reflective practitioner, I think one of the things that I'm maybe in the sense of what we're taking away or on those things, for me, I would totally agree with that we need to become better at reflecting over what we're doing. Tim Keller had a great sermon years ago where he was talking to Desiring God Conference, which I don't think would necessarily be known for its, cutting edge, we're going to try new things activity. I mean, and so to its credit, I mean, Tim Keller came out and was talking about the devil's in too deep was kind of his big thing of when it comes to evangelism, we have to recognize that the culture has shifted and what used to work. And so he referenced, he didn't specifically name the 4 laws, but he referenced the 4 laws or other ones that we've used over the years. But I go back to this sermon quite a bit. We should really start doing show notes and start linking these things. There's a lot of things we should, and there's a lot of things that we're just never going to do.
We're not.
At least at the moment. But if someone listening wants to become an intern for us and do that, I am very happy to allow you to do that. Anyway, so he just lays out in this sermon just such a good perspective of this is the problem that we face in the secular world is the challenge that we face is so big, it can't actually be solved by one person. Mm-hmm. The evangelism that we need hasn't come forth yet is what he would say, but we need lots of people thinking about it and reflecting on it. And so I would say, not only do we need to become a reflective leader, but we need to become reflective leaders within community of leaders. So, or reflective practitioners rather, within communities of practitioners. So we need this cross homogenization of information passing back and forth and learning from each other, shared learning. So, Deb and Sean are AG, but they've brought such an incredible, resource to Presbyterians or whoever else. Like, it doesn't matter that they happen to be AG or, whatever else. I mean, it just is, we got to get in this ship together. And that's actually one thing that I think is we see a little bit more in Europe, is because there's maybe so few Christians, there is becoming an openness among the body of Christ to go, wait a second, we can't do all this on our own. The time of being our own island is past. So I think that's a really good thing. I think that's a good development.
Yeah. That's something Stefan Paas talks about in his book, Church Planting in the Secular West, I believe it's called. Yeah. He talks about the need for laboratories. He talks about setting up communities that are doing mission, but also learning and trying things and being willing to fail even, or being willing to, and I think, in some sense, I think, with Cru in Europe, Spain, we're a little bit like that, because we do have that kind of a little bit of that freedom, or maybe a lot of that freedom to go, well, let's start a group over here that does ministry on the Camino de Santiago. I mean, that's kind of a laboratory in and of itself, off on the side, doing its own thing. So there's a lot of that. So I think you're seeing that happen. Maybe we're not consciously. So that's where I think reflective needs to come in. We need to be reflective that, wait, this stuff's happening. Good stuff's happening. Don't really take it and digest it, think about it with other people, put it in laboratory setting and see what happens.
So I want to be very clear with my next statement. No leader has ever come to me, anyone above me within our organization or outside of our organization, and come to me and said, here's the numbers you have to get. No one has ever given me a quota. Okay. Yeah. So my comment about numbers here needs to be tempered with that idea. There are no quotas in the environment we swim in. Everyone just wants us to go out there and do the best we can and make Jesus known as best we can. Okay. So we do take measurements and things. There seems to be, though, I want to make sure I present this. There is a danger that if you're raising support or if you're trying to motivate people to give towards the mission, which we need money in order to do it. We need, a certain amount of money has to be given and manpower and everything else. It can't be done without resources. And so you need to motivate people to give. And so you write newsletters or different things like that. But there is a destructive temptation I've got to get out there. I don't think anyone is out there thinking, okay, I've got to produce numbers, but to justify our existence, so to speak, we can get caught up in busyness. So I got to do these things. The more busy that someone is, the more things that a person has on their plate, because we want to do well in the ministry. And so we busy ourselves with things, and there's so many opportunities. Let's be honest. Like, it's not like any missionary is sitting around going, I just don't have anything to do. Maybe there are some, but I don't think there's that many of them. Okay. Usually there's more to do than they could possibly ever imagine. Okay. But within all of that, if we stay too busy with either trying to make sure for any reason, so it could be numbers, or it could be it's just, you got good things to do. Yeah. There's not space to be reflective.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes
the long. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you've got to make time for it. I think one thing you see in a lot of leadership training now at the higher levels or people is the idea that as a leader you have to schedule time to think. So I mean that's something that should be built in. Our good friend Paul Duncan would say it's something as a leader you have to build in time to think, even if you're hyper busy.
You know what's interesting is the longer I'm in leadership, the more time I need to think.
Mm-hmm. Got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too many things coming at you too fast, and it's not just evangelism. Although I think that's a huge area where we need to be thinking. But it's just different things, whether it be staff issues or direction issues or whatever else. How do you tackle the world that we're in without being able to think? And so I do some of my best thinking these days walking. It just helps me loosen up, and the kinetic part of that just really begins to unravel some of my thinking, which is fantastic. But then reading other things, I think engaging, I have to have something that I can engage with, and to be honest, that I can challenge. Hello, Enneagram 8, but I have to have something I can push back against.
Well, and I think that's an important thing, is that out of that pushing back and that, it sharpens your thinking, it sharpens your perspective. It also helps elucidate the idea that you are for or against or trying, so I think it's important that, there's conflict of ideas. That's important, because that's how we move things forward.
Yeah. That's how we move things forward. Yeah. So when it comes to evangelism, or when it comes to ministry, so one of the things that you and I were talking about even before this started was we may have moved beyond a postmodern world. We might be in a postmodern world. Yeah. We're still secular in large measure, but we've now moved on. So the way that we were distinguishing those things, and I think this becomes relevant in maybe some of the episode that we were talking about with Deb and Sean, but also into Maxwell and also into Randy Newman. Mm-hmm. It used to be, well, that's your truth, this is my truth, I'm okay with that.
It's okay. And that's cool.
Yeah. So anytime we try to bring it, I think it's important when you think in terms of where the culture, quote unquote, is at. this does not mean that postmodern thought does not still exist.
Yeah.
It actually shows up. And it doesn't mean that a person who is now shifted to what we're going to talk about doesn't have any postmodern thinking in them. They may arbitrarily think at some point in a certain way, but then other things they may reject postmodernism in certain areas of their life, but in other areas, they're totally a postmodernist.
Yeah.
Why we think that this is not possible when we talk about evangelism and discipleship, I don't understand. Like all the resources tend to go, this person's postmodern, or this is where the culture's at. And then we think these things are mutually exclusive, but no human being goes through life approaching it like that. So that's caveat number one.
Yeah.
But where I do think that we're at, and this is where I'd love your thoughts are, is currently we're realizing that even some of the things that we thought were good are uncomfortable. So whether it be missions, foreign missions, and colonialism and reconciling those two, or even Michael Meditol and I were texting last night, and he was saying that he listened to a podcast on Wesley and his wife separated because he was never at home. And because when he was at home, he was never with the family. He was always distracted by the things he had to do. Well, there's no doubt Wesley was a powerful force for the kingdom of God, but he was also a really flawed human being. But what we tend to do now is we tend to throw, I don't know how to explain it, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but we throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we've moved into that kind of thinking, where I feel like we're a little bit maybe even all fundamentalists now, and to some degree.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think that's a really good observation, and there's a growing sense of that, right? Of history has become history, and the media have become the battleground, right? Mm-hmm. Huge battleground for whatever you want to call it, but that's how we're, and part of that is all those things, I guess, are talking about identity, and I think. So I think postmodern thought, it was always unsustainable. The fact that postmodern thought was always, very, very superficial, and then very the personalness of truth. So my truth, your truth. So everyone's got their truth. Well, that was never going to hold because, and so I think, but if we go back to postmodernism's core identity or core definition as an incredulity for meta narratives, right? So. A disbelief in these big stories that communism, fascism, capitalism, they don't work for us. What we're seeing now is that just created this huge fragmentation, and now people I think are wanting to reconstruct. It seems we're probably way out of our depth. We're in the deep end of the swimming pool without our floaties right now, but
that's the exact picture I had.
But if we want to say people, it seems that people are trying to reconstruct narratives. To make sense of the future and our current and our past, and in that within a secular mindset. So we have to understand, people, even as Christians, we're reconstructing narratives that we don't probably need to but as a society we have to, right? So we're part of that process. So what does that mean? Well, at the core of that is still what I would say is what Sean and Deb were talking about is personal project. Is that the best thing we can do is create a system where everyone feels good about, and what's happening, I guess. But it seems like if you can't agree with that, then they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with those who are not fitting in those boxes. So and so before you would go, oh, well, that's okay, that's your thing. You guys go over there and do that. And now they're saying, oh, these people don't agree with us on this. That's not good. We have to figure out how to win them. On one hand, you have some people saying win them into it. Others is maybe we're going to force them into it or exclude them from. So that you see that conversation seems to be going on, I think is what you're maybe hitting at. So I think that's I believe it's an epistemological shift away from relativism to something of saying, well, no, we got to get our act together. Now, okay, where I want to go with this to finish real quick is Richard Bauckham, a biblical scholar, wrote a great book a long time ago. Bauckham passed away recently. I believe it's called The Bible and Postmodernism, or Mission in Postmodernism. And he makes the case that Christianity is not a meta-narrative because it is a narrative that comes from below. It is a suffering servant meta narrative. So it's not concerned with power. It's not concerned with creating a huge story that explains political, socioeconomics. What our world is concerned about are those things, like who's going to be in power, who's going to, and the Bible obviously has something to say about that.
Maybe it's not explaining, but rather maybe it's trying to provide a solution to the problem of. I don't know. Well, no, maybe that wouldn't be it. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I need to shut up.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I think the difference is that because Christianity historically is from below.
Yeah.
Right. It's a narrative for sure, and it is the meta narrative, right? But on a political scale, on a economic scale, on a what meta narratives are defined as from a purely economic, cultural, political concept within the postmodern idea, it's not a narrative because it's not trying, Christianity is not saying we need to create a cultural system that controls the world or makes the world do a certain thing, right?
Right.
Christianity is just saying love your neighbor, love God, and serve people. Right. And so Islam, you could say, is a meta narrative because it strives to impose a political, social, cultural construct. Right. Well, Christianity at times has done that. So don't get me wrong, but that's when usually we've gone off the rails.
Well, right? and the eschatology of Christianity will eventually solve those issues.
Yeah.
But we're it's the now, but not yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It like I said, it's actually the final narrative. It is the narrative. Right. So, but whether people believe that or do anything about it doesn't really matter because that's what's going to happen. That's what we believe. And but that's not, and when I say that too is, if you're listening to this, well, that sounds very authoritarian. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not the ushering in of a mean king who's going to make everything. It's the ushering in of eternal love and joy, is what we're talking about. So just so we're clear, we're not talking about
just so we're clear.
So we're clear. We're not,
and Amway. Everybody knows that in the kingdom there will be Amway and Hillsong Music. So funny story. I was in a conference one time, and our friend Paul Duncan, someone was up on stage speaking, and they were making the point of, heaven's going to be awesome. What kind of music are we going to sing? We don't even know. And he leans over to me and goes, everyone knows it's going to be Hillsong music. So actually this whole idea about meta narrative and that it comes from below, that actually bleeds into what I think a lot of what Maxwell Thomas was talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Of it is Philippians chapter 2. It is the submission of Jesus Christ to become man and to serve and to love his enemies. And that then frees the Christian up in the political realm, in all realms. It doesn't mean that the Christian doesn't vote. It doesn't mean that the Christian isn't politically active. It doesn't mean anything, but rather that the Christian is based in something much bigger and better than the need for political power or financial power or any kind of power, because Jesus ultimately usurps that and will win in that via we live in an upside down world.
Because
the Christian is called to that.
Because true power comes from love and service. That's ultimately what God is saying, is like true power. That's what true power is. Well, maybe that sounds bad, but
which then should, one of the points I think Maxwell was making, and that we make often on this, which then should redefine what we think success is.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because success doesn't mean getting power. It doesn't mean having the most. It doesn't even mean, this is a tension I'm currently trying to work through. So these are a little bit raw. In the Bible, it talks about being a good steward of our talents and our money and everything else, and all of those things. But on the other hand, God praises the widow who gives 2 mites and isn't necessarily concerned with the number of dollars and even what we think is the ultimate, let's say, return on investment. That's a crude way to put it. But so here's what I mean about that. If there's a conference that brings thousands and thousands of people in by a worldly system, I should be, as a donor, I should be investing in that, because it's producing numbers of a certain scale. If I'm just looking from worldly measure.
Yeah.
But in God's kingdom, it might be that the small amount that's needed, that's invested in the missionary or in the school or whatever else, in a place that doesn't ever seem really successful, is actually, in God's eyes, the wiser investment. So this is where I have a hard time parsing those things out. But I do think that in part, that's a little bit of what Maxwell was talking about too, is that it's an upside down kingdom. Yeah. And it doesn't work the way that we think it works.
Yeah. Yesterday, I sometimes I do this devotional called Celtic Daily Prayer, or I don't know, you see Celtic or Celtic? I think it's. I'm
not a Boston fan, so I think it's Celtic.
So, I think it's supposed to say Celtic. I always say Celtic because I grew up. It's a Celtic. So, but it's not written by Larry Bird or Robert Parrish or Kevin McHale. It's Celtic, so it should be Celtic, right? There's nothing about Larry Bird in this book. I feel totally weird. Anyway,
it's all the worse for it.
Yeah, for the 11th, they had this series of. This was the theme of the little devotional, and it got into Amy Carmichael. Right, Amy Carmichael, the thing, and she wrote a book. I said these things I don't know, called "His Thoughts and His Father." His thoughts said, his father said. That's what it's in the book. And in the book, she said something like this: "Is the son said, but I am not successful. His father said, at the end of the day, will my word be? Come thou good." Wait, sorry. Let me start over again. I kind of messed that up. He said, the son said, but I am not successful. And his father said, at the end of the day, will my word be, come, thou good and successful servant? If only thou wilt walk humbly with thy God, it will be, come, thou good and faithful servant. We are not called to be successful, but faithful. Relax. We've talked about this past, but I just felt that was a really good, God doesn't, it's true. He's a, welcome, good and faithful servant. He didn't say, and
good and successful servant.
And he even says the first will be last. The last will be first. So it's a really hard thing.
I'm fairly convinced that in heaven, in some way, somehow, to be honest, the sinner who shows up in the church, who everyone looks at and is like, man, why can't they get their life together? Will be closer to Jesus than the most successful evangelist in that country or whatever else, because it is only God who sees in the dark.
Yeah. And that's the power of grace.
Yeah, it is because I think God sees the person.
We'll all applaud that. We will all applaud that. Even if we're in the back, we'll go, that is it.
Yeah, because we'll understand what it means, right? Because I do think that's okay. So for example, so I'm tall, or relative on a relative scale. I'm taller than my wife. I'm okay. So I can get things that are high in the cabinet. The way that I approach, if this becomes my analogy, the way that I approach in my flesh, the Christian life is, wow, God, aren't I great because I can reach tall things that are high in a cabinet?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way that the world applauds me is, wow, look at that person. It was easy for him. He's successful because he can reach the tall things in the cabinet. And I go through my life arrogantly thinking that I'm great because I could reach those things and it was easy for me. But I think the way God looks at it is he looks at my daughter who looks at that cabinet and goes, okay, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to try, who fails, but who says, God's good. I'm going to keep trying to reach that tall thing in the cabinet, if that makes sense. And she may never actually get the thing, but she's remained faithful to try to get the thing. And I think God looks at that and he says, that is faithfulness. Just because I got it easy, I don't necessarily think that means that it's going to be that way. If that makes sense. Okay, so when we got cut off, I think where we got cut off, we'll have to go back and figure this out in the editing. But my point was that I'm tall and I can easily reach things that are high, but my daughter is short and she can't. The world looks at that and says, look at Barrett, isn't he successful because I have these natural
let's say privilege is the only way to say it, but that's easy for me. But I don't think that's the way God looks at it for my daughter. I don't think he looks at her and says, why can't you reach that stuff? You're less than or whatever. He looks at it and says, have you remained faithful to try to reach that, if that's what I've, commanded or whatever else? And therefore he judges it completely differently than I think we do. It doesn't mean that my reaching it was bad. It's fine. It is. And I should be thankful for that. And I should give praise to God, but it also doesn't mean that it's without, he just judges it differently. And I think that's an important thing for us to I don't know, take away from all of that.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. And I think really what God wants is a broken heart. Yeah. And but the God breaks our heart, it's a tricky thing, but there's this whole thing of grace and love that we've really got to. I'll just read a quick line from a U2 song, since I'm kind of a U2 freak, but Yahweh, the song Yahweh, where they say, Bono sings, take this city, a city should be shining on a hill. Take this city, if it be your will. What no man can own, no man can take. Take this heart and make it break. So, what he's getting at there is it's about a broken heart. Our heart breaks for the world, breaks for God, and so I think that's going to be the poor in spirit, right? The poor in spirit are the ones who will inherit the earth. And
right.
You and me being, moderately capable guys who've been moderately successful in the world, it's probably harder for our heart to break. As maybe for someone who, it's not that it can't, but when I say I'm, the small tastes of, success, right?
Yeah.
Like I own a watch and I get out of bed,
Yeah.
And I had a really good run at FIFA, 96 or Madden 96.
I think that's part of what, I don't know. One of my big takeaways from even just talking about missions or talking about things with Maxwell is that it is God invites us into a walk of humility to make Jesus known, an opportunity to live as a Christian in the context that we're given, and to be a Christ follower. And I don't know that there's how do I say it? There's enough there to keep me busy that I probably should focus less on strategy. Like I'm not saying strategy is not good. Like my entire week has been nothing but meetings about strategy, and it's been a really good week, and it's helped. It's helping our organization, and I'm thankful that the Lord's brought. I'm thankful that the Lord's brought the leaders that we have. Okay, so like in a 40-hour week, I've spent about 30 of it just talking about strategy and planning and being a good steward. But what's changing in my heart is those are no longer my horses and my chariots.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like I think I used to put so much faith in the strategy that it was my horse and my chariot, and I was trusting in it rather than, okay, Lord, and so if you're listening out there and you're not guilty of making strategy your horse and your chariot, then be released from my sin, because that's my thing to own. But I do think there's that pitfall that we can fall into, or that pit that we can fall into as ministers.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a fine line, but once again, you got to go back to the prodigal son. The guy who shows up with nothing gets it all.
Yeah.
And what we have very little of what we can do has any value, unfortunately for us, but as any value to God, and that's. So that's a hard. The more I look at the Christian life, the more and more I get to is this something that has to go on in your heart, where we strip away all this, our own security and insecurity and needs, and just really drill it down into Jesus and what He has done for us, and in that we're transformed to then go out and do mission, go out and do share the gospel. And so that may be where we're, the conversation is and I think this kind of came up in workplace with our friend Brian, was talking about, what's our motivation for evangelism? Is our motivation a deep love for God and a deep love for our neighbor, or is it to get a strategy done or to check off a list or to feel good about ourselves?
Or to feel good about ourselves, or to feel
accomplished,
validated, accomplished, accolades. Yeah, all of those things. Those are the tough things.
I was actually walking in Madrid last week or 2 weeks ago. I was in there for a work meeting. That got canceled.
Why you're coughing.
That got canceled while I was there. Anyway, that's why. And there was someone, I recognized it immediately, but someone standing on a box preaching in the main square in Puerta del Sol, with people around them who clearly were who were in the same organization, right? Because they all looked the same, and they were, but none of the passerbys were stopping, and I look at that and I go, God bless those people. Those people want to do something. They want to serve God. They're trying their best. And maybe, if they do that every day for a year, they'll get a few people, and God, and so blessings to that, but I'm just wondering, all the people walking by, thousands of people walking by, and even me going, come on, guys, and I'm on their side, and I want to, but I, and that goes back to, kind of Sean and Deb's talking about secular people, Maxwell talking about, we're really entering into the world of people, those people who need Jesus. And then, Randy, I think Randy did a great job. I think the two things from Randy that I took away were the need for time. People need time for the gospel, in the gospel, for the God, and they need a community. They need to be able to be a part of a group of people, or see a group of people, or process with a group of people. And I thought those were, and I just looking at that thing in Madrid, and just, it's like, it's not bad, but I just feel bad because you could be spending time with a non-Christian getting a coffee right now, and it would be much more profound. And so I want to be careful. I don't want to be too critical, but
apropos of Randy, Randy has some of the best stories. If you ever get a chance to, I think everyone should just buy all of Randy's stuff and then also listen to Randy, because I think he's an incredible mind, especially when it comes to evangelism. But he's also, to be honest, one of the most, he's a very good speaker, and he knows how to tell a story. And he tells a story of, he lives in the Washington, D.C. area. And so he was on the metro shortly after 9/11, in which, tensions are always high after everything was changing. And so they're all sitting there on the metro one day, and this person comes on the metro and says, "Excuse me, everybody, I just need your attention for a moment, please." And everyone's like, "Uh-oh, what's going on?" And then the person starts singing, and I forgot what hymn it is, but it's like, "My faith is based on nothing less than Schofield notes and scripture press," or whatever it is. And this woman puts her, I think this is how the story goes. Randy, we'll have you on to correct my story, but I think she puts her hands over her ears, is like, no, stop it. And so the guy finishes, she's just yelling through the whole thing. and then so he gets off at the next stop and goes on to the next car. And she just looks at him and she goes, "He gets on here every day." And it's just such a good picture of I'm the heart's there, man. The heart's there, but
they're good. It's good. It's a good person.
Might be missing the point, and maybe there's a different way.
Not a reflective practitioner. Let's just say
that's right. And but that's actually what Randy is. Randy is an incredibly reflective practitioner. And since we had Randy on, I was thinking about a story that he told. I think it was after we were finished. I don't think he would mind me sharing this, because I've heard him share it publicly before. But he was talking about how in Colorado at one of our big staff conferences, they had on, it was kind of the parade of, what God's doing throughout the country and the U.S. campus ministry, and awesome to hear stories about success and just what God's doing. But the way he put it was it was a parade of person after person from mostly Southern or big, universities with evangelical presence. So a couple of them, I won't mention the ones he mentioned, but anyway, and they would get up there and, man, it's just awesome what God's doing. And of course, here he's languishing in Baltimore, where it was like impossible to see anything happen. And they would ask, okay, so how are you seeing this happen? And what are you doing? And the person would say, well, we're just praying. And he said, I turned to my wife and I hit her and I was like, that's what we're missing. We're not praying.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe. And so I think part of what I'm walking away from here, I think in that moment, is I've kind of reflected over our conversation with him, and I've reflected over just some of we as an organization, but also the church, needs to be listening to the people who are working in hard soil, because they're the ones who are reflecting best, because they have to.
Yeah.
It's the people who are currently seeing, quote unquote, tons of success. We need to listen to find out what's going on. But we fall into it is very easy to stumble and to think that is therefore a recipe for success.
Yeah. And
then we start applying that to every context. And when it doesn't work, we say, well, we either need to try harder or double down or, whatever else. When in reality, I think we also need to be bringing in the people who are in really tough places, because they're doing the cutting edge thinking. So on the one hand, we need the people who are seeing success, because they're going to help everyone who might be in a similar situation apply that and then begin to see success in their context. But we also need to make sure at the same time we're lifting up people and listening to people who are in the tough places, because they're the ones doing the best thinking.
Yeah.
And what, at least of my current, let's say, survey of a lot of Christian podcasts and thinking, we tend to only have the successful people.
This is true. This creates another massive existential crisis for people, is that, and I think you and I have all gone through this, and a lot of people we talk to have too, is the assumption under all that is, if you're not seeing fruit the way we are, there's something wrong with you. You're doing it wrong.
Right.
If I could just get over there and get involved, I'll fix it for you.
Yep.
And I came with that attitude to Europe a little bit. I'm like, it can't be that.
So did I. So did I.
And and talking to other people,
I was disabused of that
disabused. That's a great word. Wait, that's a quote somewhere. Disabuse yourself of that. Someone used that as a put down at some point. Anyway, so I've had the similar experience. I have a friend. He's planted a church here in Granada. It's been, I think, for Spain quite successful. But I had another friend who's a pastor, big church in Colorado, and he came over and kind of did the same thing. Was like, you guys just need to pray more. And I'm like, and God bless him. He was trying to help, and
right.
But I always tease my friend who's here in Spain, because they had a crazy situation where one of the guys who's on their team and member of the church, and he died. Like, he had his heart stopped in the middle of a pharmacy, and he was dead. And because it's a small church, it really affected the church. They brought him back. He's alive now.
Wow.
So I always tell them he needs to go to the States and go around and tell people, well, if you can just get a resurrection going in one of your churches, it's gonna be, things are gonna take off. Just need a resurrection, and I'm not saying the guy was actually resurrected in the same way, but for this church, it was a very powerful moment of prayer, of growing, of trusting God through something that was very, someone young and in their prime who almost died and was in a very serious situation and would have left a wife and 2-3 kids. And just, so for this church, a group of, 30, 40 people, a small group of people, it was powerful. It was God was working in their midst in a very intense way. And they, and probably help them even grow even more beyond that. But, we're going to talk about the churches that have, 50 baptisms. Some of them might even have been rebaptized.
Well, okay. So I'm gonna, here's a little bit of a,
and I'm not saying either of those are bad. I want to be careful because God bless, but those are two different things that are going on in two different places. Why do we have to try to put them on even keel and go, well, because you're not seeing what I'm seeing, there's something wrong.
Right.
That's, that's what
but I think this is also one of the things that I think is a very real possibility. This goes back to my I can get things from a high shelf comment.
Yeah.
How God looks at things, the church of 20 people in a very difficult context who remains faithful to him and prays and follows him, but sees many of their children walk away from him and everything else. In God's eyes, that may be the most faithful church.
Yeah.
Because in that context, it is incredibly difficult to remain faithful to Jesus.
Yeah.
It's actually, quote unquote, very easy to remain faithful to Jesus when you're involved when you have a critical mass of people where you don't feel like you're the only one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's actually, you start to have the problem of people aren't really necessarily, and this is where we get into debates, are they Christian or are they not Christian? Well, look, for the people when there's only 20 people, I would wager that the vast majority of those people are true Christ followers, because they're not getting kudos for showing up.
Yeah.
Right. There's no reason for them to show up. But for the person
That's very true.
There's lots of people who are showing up in Bentonville, Arkansas, because it is socially advantageous to make sure you show up to the local Baptist church on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Or a Sunday morning. And I'm not questioning necessarily people's faith. What I'm saying is, interesting things happen when you reach critical mass. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't reach critical mass. I pray that we reach critical mass because, hopefully more people would hear and everything else. But I just think we need to look at it differently. And I think Randy and all the conversations we've had recently bring that up. Another interesting conversation that happened this week as a result of that conversation with Randy was I was texting back and forth with another leader within Agape in Europe. And we were talking about, and I'd be interested to hear some of if you have any thoughts on this, no pressure if you don't. But he was referencing the comment that we were saying about creating plausibility structures for God and folders for God, and basically saying, okay, well, people don't have the prerequisites to make sense of the gospel message. So what do we need to put? So the problem of law 1 is not law 1, it's word 1. And so how do we backfill those files? And his question was, are there files that we've noticed that people have to have? So what do we noticed that are files that are missing? And then what are the files that we think, okay, these are the files that have to be there in order for them to make sense? And then how do you create those? Yeah. I have thoughts on it, but I don't know if you have thoughts in that regard, or what you see in Spain, because Spain, the files in every culture and every person are a little bit different, but I don't know what you have.
I think I was in a kind of a board meeting, Agape Spain board meeting with some people who are thinkers and so they were kind of saying something very interesting to me, because we were asking the question, where are opportunities in the future in Spain, and they were all saying people are losing their moorings. There is not the security. There is not only the security of like physical security, but the mental security is not there. It is a society that needs to be walked along with, to be accompanied. They kept saying the word accompanied. People need to be accompanied, and I think you see this more and more. There's just this now almost an ineffable reaching for truth or meaning or belonging constantly for people, and you see people are reaching out for stuff, and it's hard to find it. We've liquid modernism. We've liquefied our institutions. So what is there left? The self, and that's a very lonely place. And so I think community and just people who are looking out for others. I think that's the church. If we do that well, we will become more and more known what we were in the Roman times, which was the people who, took the abandoned babies, took the sick, cared for them. I think that there's going to be we need to lose some things, and some people, there might be some winnowing that goes on for us to be able to really do that. But by and large, if you go down to Africa, who were the people who were helping the AIDS orphans? Who were the people helping people dying of AIDS? They were Christians. Still are.
Yep.
Governments too. I'm not saying it's not, but the people in the front lines are the Christians. Will we be the Christians, I think, in community that offer up hope and meaning to people? So I think a lot of it's going to be in community in the world we're in. I think there's an element that we of the apologetic or belief area too that is important. I'm still struggling with that a little bit because I'm not entirely sure, and we're not maybe as far deep into that. Most Spaniards, I think where you see Shauna Deb's thinking is still a lot of people believe. They believe in something. They believe in God. They like Jesus. So we're still in a very, the Southern Europe is still, there's still that hints of that religion. So we don't maybe need the mental files to be so important, but it's more the I think the practical side. Does Christianity really offer anything? That's how I would answer that.
Yeah. So part of what you're saying is for at least the Spanish context is that some of the files that are missing are the files of practical caring community.
Yeah, I think so.
And how does that fit into? How is that different from the narrative that I'm receiving that says you're an island in the sea and that's like the third time I've referenced that song today. That's weird. I love Dolly Parton. But or was it Linda Ronstadt who sang?
I don't know. I just know there's a great Bottle Rocket song about trying to go to a Dolly Parton concert.
So I was watching The Office the other day, and it was the episode where they got broken into and everyone's stuff got stolen. So Michael did an auction called Crime Aid. And and so he wanted all these songs from Bruce Springsteen, and then they switched over to Daryl, and Daryl was like, Mike gave me a list of 5 songs. Three were Huey Lewis and the News. 1 was Linda Ronstadt. It was just awesome. Anyway, where was I? But it seems to be so this may be part of the I think it's possible to maybe identify specific folders that need to be formed and how to think about that. I think that's a good way to approach it. But I think there is also the reality that sometimes we need to be creating a structure in which, because it's impossible to point out the folders in everyone's life, or to know or anticipate them. So if we have structures where people can begin to fill those. So there's known and unknown folders, if that makes sense. So a known folder is like, why is there suffering in the world? So they have a sense of a questioning of the goodness of God. But the unknown there is, do people care for me because I lost someone in a freak accident? And that's an unknown. But you can't get to that one outside of the community. And there's 2 different levels of folders. There's like folders and subfolders or whatever.
This is good, yeah.
And so I actually think in evangelism, and this is where I would say body evangelism becomes incredibly important. And this is where maybe the area of apologetics is really important. And we need it, desperately need it. But we also have to remember that apologetics just doesn't answer everything, because oftentimes there is the kitchen table apologetic, which someone needs to have answered of, okay, why is there suffering in the world? But really what I want to know is, why do I hurt so much? And did God care that my dad died, or, whatever else? I mean, I think they're the same question, but they're not the same question at the same time. Yeah. And so making Jesus known in that context actually requires a different quote unquote skill set. And the person who can answer the philosophical side and the apologetic side often is not the person who should be answering that question. It's kind of like when, so my wife is just referencing she's rereading a book called Whole Brain Child in order to help us parent better. And there's left brain and right brain. I don't remember which one is responsible for which, but basically the end result is this: if your kids come out in the middle of the night and they're up and they can't sleep, the worst thing you can do is, it's late, you need to go to sleep, which is exactly what I do.
Yeah, me too.
Right. What they were saying is the best thing you need to do is you need to connect and you need to help on the emotional level. And so you comfort first and you get them through that. So then they can settle down in order to go back to bed.
Yeah, not create anxiety. Yeah.
Right. But as a parent, it's too late.
And I'm tired already too.
And I'm tired. But you have to hold that intention and go, so I know the apologetic reasons here of a child needs sleep. You need sleep because you're a child and all these different things. But there is a reality thereof. But on a pastoral plane, I need to answer this different and I need to have a different approach. And I actually think we need the pastoral approach to evangelism currently, maybe, I don't want to say more so. We need it in dual partnership with the apologetic side. So we need to have the apologetics in our head, but we have to be able to release the pastoral aspect.
Yeah.
And I would say, because often those two people are not exactly the same people, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You need body evangelism.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need the person who can do the pastoral at the same time that the apologetic is coming out.
You need setters, right? Like in volleyball. Is that what they're called?
Bump set spike, buddy.
You need spikers. So I think you're right. I think we've unfortunately compartmentalized a lot of evangelism, right? Like it's over here and then it's over here. And those things, I think they're effective because they attract certain levels of people. And there's always the danger, the extremities of that. The I'm just going to have a website that's got information, which is great. We should have that. But that's going to only reach a certain small section of the world that's out there looking for the information. That may be a lot of people. Obviously, there's a lot of people in the world. But then you get people who are really going to be pastoral and comforting, but maybe aren't as. So you got there are two poles to what should be a more integrated, holistic approach, right? Because you can also get over here and just be friends with people and never go, oh, by the way, we need to talk about this. The people who are really, I think, really great evangelists bring those two really well together. And are love people naturally. And so I think exactly what you're hitting on is what we need. We need a bigger picture, and I think we have it. I think here's the thing. I'll just be honest with you. I don't think.
Thank you, because I really felt like up until this point you were just lying.
No.
And so finally I'm getting on. I'm just kidding. I always say that and I'm always like, I haven't been lying before. Anyway, sorry.
I don't think I think what has changed is us, right? We've overthought evangelism sometimes.
Yeah.
We've made it into this but people the whole time are still becoming Christians in spite of what we're doing. But why? Because we all go to a church. We naturally form communities. We naturally, not always, but naturally we sometimes invite our friends into that. We do things, we go serve the poor, we go preach the gospel, we do all those things. And so we're not maybe cognizant, but we kind of created these structures, And so I think people, like, there's not any real trick, right? To getting people have been trusting Christ for the same reasons since 2,000 years ago, is that some of them heard something, they go, well, that's interesting, I'm going to go explore that. Or other people just saw, well, those people are interesting. Or, hey, my mom, her life changed.
Or an entire house. Yeah, an entire house comes to know Christ because one person. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what we need to do is rethink how we can do it better and bring it together and more kind of, Cru, I could be totally wrong. I think it was Mid-Atlantic. It was like 15, 20 years ago. They did a big survey of all the people who trusted Christ and their movements. And they found, it was the Mid-Atlantic, so that was like what, Virginia? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I can't remember since we got rid of the regions, but they did a survey. Someone out there can probably find it. I have it somewhere, and probably on my laptop. I don't know. I could probably do a search for it or something. But it basically showed that like 90% of the people who trusted Christ through Cru did so because of community or relationships. And my guess is if you surveyed, now I think that you might have some countries that are outliers to that because in the place where they are, where there's kind of this rejection of one truth, and now everyone's looking to go towards Christianity. Sometimes that happens. There's these big waves, but those are outliers. Those don't happen that often. And then still within that, most people will be becoming Christians because, whoa, something happened to my friend. Or these people, they came to my house and they said some really weird words, but I could tell they were really sad that, my wife was sick. I don't understand. There's this deeper, evangelism isn't just proclamation. It's not just doing stuff. It's those things combined. And I think we need to get back to, how did we become? I think if you took a general poll of the people we know, very few of them, it was just a proclamation event that they became a Christian. Certainly are. We should certainly do it. I'm not saying, but most people, it's relationship. It's relationship, community with proclamation, with people. It was people talking about Jesus, people making Jesus the issue. We're not just hiding it, but it's not.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing. So 2 points I'll make to that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't proclamation in a vacuum. So it wasn't as though the Holy Spirit or folders or information deposits weren't being made to build a plausibility structure in order to accept that. Okay, so that's one. Then the Holy Spirit breaks in and works. That's two. But then three, never underestimate. So Michael Medetol, who's been on here before, I think we'll probably have him on again. He became a Christian when he was 18 years old. He had been going to Young Life for like a year. And at Young Life, every Thursday or whenever it was, he would hear the gospel and he doesn't remember it ever being spoken, not once. Yeah. And then he goes to a Young Life camp in the summer and he becomes a believer at that Young Life camp. And he was like, one night, he was like, I've never heard this before. And it's like, like he literally cannot remember it ever being, but during that time, what was happening? Relationships were being built with people who loved Jesus. There was a way of talking in which he began to go, well, maybe this is normal. So that looking back, he doesn't hear the specifics of the gospel, although they were being preached, but it began to be able to make sense so that when the Holy Spirit decided to drop the hammer, the Holy Spirit was working all along, but you can't underestimate the year-long journey that was taking process along the way. And so I think there's a lot of power in that. And so I think we do well in all contexts to remember that, and then to remember that people ultimately are relational beings and will come to, if they don't come to Christ in the context of relationship, there's probably relationship that's been going on, number one. And number two, they will follow Christ and stay in Christ in the context of relationship. And so, and in the context of community. And so both of those things need to remain.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, the tremendous actor, I think one of the great actors of our you and I's generation. He was an amazing actor. Even in bad movies, he made it better. He just made it better. And you could tell even he knew it was a bad movie. This is not what he was, but he would make it better. His sister is an evangelical, and he was a kind of a moderately practicing Catholic. Obviously, he had a lot of things he was working through in his life. But I read an interview where it came up about his sister being an evangelical, and he said it's so frustrating because everyone in Hollywood thinks, evangelical Christians or Christians are these mean, horrible people. He goes, but when I look at them, I see people who care for each other, who care for others, who come and really do their best to, to make the world a better place. He goes, that's what I see. And that's what I know of my sister and her friends. And he said, that's what I love about them. And that's why he kind of said he would defend them, the evangelicals.
Wow.
Now that was a while ago, maybe in our current political situation, it's not so easy anymore. But I think that's what I feel like we were known for as Christians, and we need to be known for. That someone who has, no reason to, but 2 points there. No reason to really defend us, was defending the Christian movement because of what he saw. But then it shows you the power of that to influence people to consider, the claims of Jesus and consider who Jesus is. Yeah. Because of that, because of relationship, because of community. And Hoffman said he had gone to church with his sister. He went to church with his sister occasionally, and so we need to be, I think, aware of how powerful community can be.
Yep. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
We're running long. We had technical difficulties, so technically I don't know how long.
We don't know how long this is.
Might be our longest podcast, might be our shortest. We don't know until we actually go back and look at the recording. Yeah. So okay. So are you watching anything recently that's just we need to know about? Because you're always watching interesting things. Or
I went back and watched a movie. I went back and watched a movie, and it's a great movie. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh, that's a good movie.
It's brilliant. I just went back and watched it again. Because I saw it like maybe when it came out. It's and it's just fantastic. Gary Oldman, Cumberbatch, Tom Hardy, and of course, oh gosh, the guy who I won't give away the thing, but oh gosh, the guy he's in
I can't think of his name either. Finally won an Oscar for The King's Speech.
Yeah, he's in everything. Just fantastic cast. Fantastic just story,
plot line, everything.
Plot line, just it's a spy thriller, but with a lot of British people speaking very dryly. I don't know, I'm not gonna do it British, but very all kind of undercurrents of threats, and it's
good
just go watch that. It's on Netflix. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. As I said, I'm currently going through a little bit of The Office before it gets taken off of American Netflix, and that was a brilliant show.
It was a brilliant show. Even after Michael Scott left, it was still.
I didn't watch a bunch after he left, so I'm still. And there's a bunch of episodes I've never seen, so I'm watching some of them for the first time, and it's just delicious. So that's a lot of fun. Well, cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I hope you have a great weekend.
You too.
It's Friday. Enjoy it. This will post on like a Monday, so this conversation part will be irrelevant, but people can be put in the mood for the weekend ahead, maybe.
For the next weekend.
For the next week. Yeah, that's right. Hey, everybody. Listen, I should have said this at the beginning. Maybe I'll do a voiceover before we ever start. But if you like the podcast, thank you. If you don't like the podcast, shame on you. But no, if you like the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you do your podcast. That really helps us be discovered. But also, tell your friends about it. Tell them to listen. And if you could subscribe, if you're not yet a subscriber, that helps us find new people and grow the listenership. If you think that this podcast should be flushed down the memory hole, thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you soon. Buen camino, my friend.
Buen camino.